Raise your hand if you get drug tested in your school because you're a student athlete. According to Ohio University, 38% of schools in the United States have drug testing policies in place for student athletes. Another study shows that 72.5% of students have drank alcohol, while 36.8% of students have tried marijuana. Having drug tests in your school will create a positive image and won't hurt others or yourself. High schools need drug tests for student athletes because drugs affect relationships and have major consequences on your body. College and professional athletes get drug tested, so why don't high school athletes? Today, I would like the opportunity to persuade high schools to consider implementing random drug tests because they are cheap, decrease drug and alcohol use, and they actually help students. First, let's talk about the price of drug tests. Drug tests are fairly cheap. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, drug tests only cost about $10 to $30 per test, depending on what type of test you get. So let's use my school as an example. So at Yates Center High School, there was 75 athletes, and so a minimum would be about $750, while maximum would be $2,250 if you drug tested them one time every year. So $2,200 sounds like a lot of money, but it wouldn't be that hard to attain. Fundraisers in schools are known to bring in a lot of money, and there's a lot of support around the country for high schools to be drug-free. All you would have to do is make an action. So I've now explained why cost is not a factor. So let's talk about how drugs decrease student drug and alcohol use. Having a drug test improves not only athletes' health, but also high school health in general. In recent studies, schools that have drug tests show that 16% of students still take drugs, and schools that don't have drug tests, 22% still take drugs. The percent of high schoolers that do drugs decreases over time with drug tests in place. Most students don't want to get caught taking drugs, so they will do just about anything to not get caught. And a lot of students will usually stop doing drugs to prevent this. Tests are also completely legal. They do not violate your First Amendment right either. According to the Summit Medical Group, in 2002, the Supreme Court ruled that drug tests were not a violation of privacy. They ruled that tests are completely legal for students participating in extracurricular activities. So I've now explained how cost is not a factor, and random drug tests decrease student use of drugs and alcohol. Now let's talk about how they actually help students. Random tests help students get off drugs and addiction. Tests aren't made to punish teens, but to help them and prevent future use. Exposing kids that do drugs help parents and schools get therapy and treatment needed for that student. Therapy and treatment are a lot better for students than just kicking them off the team or kicking them out of school. Not providing help isn't going to help addiction, it's just going to make it worse. Therapy and treatment help students get off addiction and prevent further use. Random testing help prevent drug use spread to other students. If fewer students are using drugs, fewer drugs are in the school, which then could possibly influence others to do drugs. Fewer drugs and fewer druggies equals less spread and a healthier environment. Random drug tests also make sports fair. According to the Brown and White Institution, random testing makes the playing field fair in sports. Random tests prevents cheating, support fair play, and equality. Random tests ensure that no athlete has an unfair advantage over another because of drugs. Performance-enhancing drugs and steroids can also be very dangerous. Performance-enhancing drugs help athletes build strength and endurance in the short run, but have major consequences on your body in the long run. Tendinitis, high blood pressure, liver failure, tumors, HIV, and hepatitis are all long-term effects of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs. Today, you've learned why high schools should have random testing for student athletes. I have discussed how cost is not and should not be a factor, how random drug tests decrease student drug and alcohol use, and how they actually help students. When you're in high school, I'd hate for you to go down the path of drugs and addiction. High schools could prevent this by simply putting random drug tests in place for students and athletes. If high schools could spend a little extra time and money they can make their high schools drug free and overall a better place.